Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Bava Basra, Daf Lamed Vav, longest blot we've had in a couple of days, and it really doesn't qualify. And we're starting 5 lines from the bottom on Lamed Hey Amid Beis. Let's say that I was going to be the person to go make a chazaka on your property, but I was sent by a goy to go be machzik your property. So it says the Gemara, Amar Yehuda Marav, Yisrael Abba Machmas Akum. If I'm a Jew, but I was sent by a guy to go make a chazaka on your property, Harehu Ke'akum, Ma'akum ein lo chazaka ela bishtar. Just like by a guy, an akum can't be a squatter and successfully take over your property. Af Yisrael Abba Machmas Akum ein lo chazaka ela bishtar. Simple, glad. If I'm the representative of a guy, I cannot be a squatter to effect change of ownership. Masha'en Kain, if I was going on my own volition as a yid, I would be able to. Last line of Lamed Hey Amid Beis, Amar Rava, V'i Amar Yisrael. However, if the yid said, Lididi Amar li Akum deminach zavna, if the yid says, you should believe me, and I should be able to be the squatter because the non-Jew told me that he bought it from you, then he is believed. And Rashi, the Rashbam, says on the top of the page, "L'didi amar li akum deminach zavna mehemen." Why? Demide asika daite lemitan hachi hachanami haba matzi lemitan anazivinta minach ve'achal tishnei chazaka. If he was going to make this claim, the Rashbam says, he could have also made another claim that would have been guaranteed. So therefore, we have a migu. And the Gemara says on the second line of Lamed Vav Amid Aleph, Mi ikamidi the ilu akum amar lo mehemen, the ilu amar Yisrael mishmei de akum mehemen. The great question, right? If the guy would have said it, no dice. But if the yid says it in the name of the guy, that's a no problem. No problem, says the Gemara, that can't be. And therefore, Ela Amar Rava. Rava was, the version 1 of Rava was what we just started with on the last line of Lamed Hey Amid Beis. But now on the fourth line of Lamed Vav Amid Aleph, we're going to see the second and final version of Rava. El Amar Rava, no. I Amar Yisrael, if the Yisrael, who was the messenger of the Akum, said something a little different, then he would be Mehemen. What is that line? Kame didi zavna akuminach. I witnessed it with my own 2 eyes that you sold this to the guy. That's different than saying the guy told me that he bought it from you. No. I witnessed that this actually took place. Kame didi zavna akuminach, the zavna niali. And then he told me that I should go take this property. Then mehemen, migu di iboy amarle anazivinta minach, because then the migu does work. And there we don't have that conflict of if the guy says it doesn't work, but if a Jew says it on behalf of a guy, then it does work. It's interesting. In this case, we typically assume that a yid has na'amanos and that a goy doesn't have na'amanos. That's not what's going on here. That's why the Gemara couldn't handle the first answer, because it seemed to imply that the goy's words were not valid through his own mouth, but were valid through the mouth of a Jew. That doesn't change the authenticity of what's being said. The content is the same. So therefore, Rava had to pivot and change the case. 6-7 lines down. Amar of Yehuda, Haiman denakit magla v'tuvlaya. If you have someone who takes a knife to cut figs, v'tuvlaya is the rope that they use to climb the tree. The Amar, and this person claims, and we've seen this Gemara before on Daf Lamed Gimel. If the person claims Ezil, Igzera ledikla deplania disvante mine, I'm going to cut down parts of the palm tree of this particular person because I purchased this from him. So as we said on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis Mehemen, why is a person believed when they make this claim? They've provided no paperwork and they did not squat for 3 years. Zog the Gemara, because lo chatzif inish lemigzar dikla delavdile. Because back in the day at least, nobody had the audacity to go walk into someone's yard and cut down fruit that didn't belong to them. Again, our generation has changed wildly just in the last, 15, 20 years, probably even less than that. Nevertheless, this svara, I mean, there may be halachic applications of this, but socially, it doesn't seem true anymore. It seems that nowadays people will do and say anything. Next case. V'amar of Yehuda, Haiman, if there was a person, the achzik, who tried to squat on property, miguda de arudi, from a wall that was right near wild animals, ulevar, and outward. So then the Gemara says, lo habe chazaka. Why is this not considered a chazaka? My time, because Meimar Omar, the owner of that property, could say, look, I wasn't going to complain when you were in that spot, when you were sitting on my property right outside the fence of the wild animals, because he could have argued, Kol dezara nami arudi achlile. Anything that you would have planted there, the wild animals are going to get. It's right near the fence. They'll claw through the fence. They'll jump over the fence. There's other animals. So therefore, the lack of macha from the balabas is not considered enough to allow you to acquire the property. And similarly, a third of the way down on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Amar of Yehuda, Achla Orla Eina Chazaka. You're just a shegetz. You're sitting here eating tarpis. You're eating food that's orla. It's an Isser Doraisa to consume that food. That's not considered you being machzik my property. And if I sit there quietly, maybe I'm just kind of sitting back and be like, well, let's see where this goes. Because you're eating orla. You're not allowed to eat orla. And therefore, Eina Chazaka, there is no squatter's kinyan. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa just like this. Achla orla shvius v'kilaim. If a person is eating orla, which was only our case of Rabbi Yehuda, but even broader, shvius or kilaim, any of those, if a person sits there for 3 years, he sits there for 30 years, it doesn't matter. Well, 30 years wouldn't work for orla. 3 years, let's keep it simple. Then, eina chazaka. Amar of Yosef, achla shachas, if a person ate grains that are not yet ripe, that's what shachas is, lo hava chazaka, that's not normal for you to eat that food. Amar Rava v'ibit savar mechoza, but if you're in the locale of mechoza kaima, if that's where you are, then have chazaka, then that would be considered to be relatively normal. And the Rashbam speaks about this as well, that it was not abnormal to feed that to animals. Amar Rav Nachman, tafticha, if a person is trying to squat on a property that is super, super, super dry land, take a look at the Rashbam, 4 lines before the wide lines. The Rashbam writes, Zibur hamaschel tafticha, karka pisucha umelea b'koim. The ground is cracked and it's filled with crevices. Ve'ena motzia perosea lo havya chazaka demipnei rasa lo hikpid limchos. I have no desire to even get off my couch to go make a macha against you. What are you doing? You're on property that doesn't grow anything. My sprinkler's broken, my leg is hurting, and I'm not about to get up and go water the ground. No chazaka in cases like this. Afi kura ve'ayal kura. If you plant a kura of seed, and all you yield is a kur of seed, that is not a good return on investment. All you did is recoup your expenses. But when you're planting a field, you want to plant one seed that yields hundreds and hundreds of seeds. If all you do is plant a kur of seeds and you yield a kur of seeds, that kind of property, lo have chazaka. That even if I don't make a macha, still you don't get the squatter's rights. And another case, which will bring us to the end of this sugya, halfway down on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Tahani debei Reish Galusa lo machzibon, v'lo machzikinan behu. Between me and the Reish Galusa, I can't squat on his property, and he can't squat on mine because there's a level of yira. What am I going to do? Make a macha of the Reish Galusa? That's not happening. That's not happening. And if he's squatting on my property, no way. I'm not going to squat on his property, so there is no dynamic where I and he, the Reish Galusa, could create a chazak on each other's properties. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol nihye bidbaro. Says the Gemara at the 2 dots, a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. Enjoyment.
Oh, it's geschmack.
So you can't have that even though you're not fasting on Tisha B'Av because it's enjoyment.
I don't know if that's true. I don't recall ever doing that, but coffee in the morning, I definitely, I don't eat too much it's not like I actually have a bris Tisha B'Av morning. I have a Chil Hashem Shaila shtickle. I have to explain it to the room because I never fast on Tisha B'Av because of migraines.
Yeah.
As Rabbi Friedman's Fasak. And I should be super clear. He didn't say that. He said, if every time you fast, you get a headache, then you don't have to fast. Otherwise, you have to try. But I'm 100%. I'm 1,000 for 1,000. Anyways, I'm doing a bris for a family. And like normally you just kind of avoid drinking because the bracha is tied to the godless of the mitzvah. But here I can mamish drink. So I'm going to have to make an announcement that just want to let you know that today is a somber day in Jewish law. What?
But for health reasons.
Right, but then I'm drinking wine on Tisha B'Av. It feels so weird. Maybe I should get grape juice. I don't think the wine matters. It's just
Yeah, that is one of the.
Yeah, lo pashut. Although not as difficult as the case that came in today of a same gendered couple, two men. They purchased an egg from a Yiddish woman, and they implanted an embryo with Yiddish genetic material on both sides, male and female. One of the men donated, and they got a female egg, and they implanted this embryo into a non-Jewish surrogate. So I had this case. I know. Well, actually, it's not going well. Rabbi first holds that in these cases that you should not get a Jewish egg.
But they did.
They did, but that was an error. Again, this is not a firm couple. There are two men. It's just saying. But,
Didn't ask.
so I had this case about 6 or 7 years ago, and another case, Taka, just happened right now in my WhatsApp group with other Moalim. So Rabbi first holds that the babies are going, because we follow the birth canal, not Pasha. Okay, there's the Gemara of Avadim. So this goes back to the open of the parak many blot ago. We've been discussing a lot of different things. So here the Mishnah speaks about Avadim. Is it the Mishnah or was it a Brisa? Yeah, it's the Mishnah. So the Mishnah, the open of the parak of Cheskat Sabatim on Kav Ches Meralov says that Avadim was among the list of things that if you make a chazaka of Shalosh Shanim, you're a squatter effectively. Namely, I've used your Eved for 3 years. The Eved becomes mine. No one's going to let their babysitter go for 3 years when you need your babysitter. That's not happening. So if I use your babysitter for 3 years, done. So says the Gemara of Avadim. Wait a second. Avadim yeshlem chazaka? How can you make a kinyan on a person? A chazaka type of kinyan, I can understand you could buy one. I understand that we have a profile like that you can buy. We are Avadim similar to Karka. Are they similar to Metaltalim, which is a Shas discussion? We typically assume they're similar to Karka. So the Gemara says, how can you say that you can make a chazaka? B'ha'amar Reish Lakish, hagodros eilen chazaka. Things that are typically godros, they don't have a chazaka. Take a look at the Rashbam, 5 lines into the wide lines. Hagodros eilen chazaka, godros tzon, typically fenced-in animals. V'chol davar hamahalach b'drachim u'b'shvakim. Anything that really walks on the path or in the marketplace, sheyachalomar, where we could have otherwise argued me'atzmo nichnas, that they entered a space on their own, atahichnasto lebeischa, or you walked it into your house, vechazakta bo, and then you made a chazaka, ein a chazaka. That's not considered a chazaka. So that's what the Gemara means when in the din of Reish Lakish. So says the Gemara, how can you say there's a chazaka by Avadim? Reish Lakish says no. Amarava, Taka, it's true, Eilan chazaka le'altar. When we say that there's no chazaka, that just means it's not like a kinyan of I chaptu you, you're mine. However, that's what Reish Lakish meant. However, aval yeshlan chazaka la'achar gimel shanim. But if one does have a chazaka of 3 years, that is considered a chazaka even by an Eved, and that's not a violation of Reish Lakish's rule. Amarava, what about an Eved that's a baby? Imhaya katan mutal be'arisa, who wasn't in the category of godros, they weren't walking around b'shvakim u'verachovos. So it says the Gemara, but baby's mutal be'arisa, then the din should be yesh lo chazaka la'altar. Because when you put together the din of Reish Lakish and the din of Rava, nothing now. But when he gets older, he'll be yours. He'll be your Eved.
Doesn't he go free after 6 years?
Whatever the details are, but for the period of time that he's free, then or it could be Eved Kanani. It could also not be a Yid, yeah. So anyway, that's what the Gemara said, that's Chazak al-Altar. Says the Gemara Pshita, of course that's true. The only time we had a limit of 3 years, where we needed 3 years, was when we were dealing with someone who could walk around. This baby can't move. He's in his little crib. He's in a bassinet. Says the Gemara, Lo tzricha de isla ime. This one actually had a mother with him in the house. Ma'u detema nechush dilma ime ayla. Perhaps the mother would bring him to work one day, and then she would leave and not come back, and the child would be all on his own, and therefore he gets the chab. No, that's not how it works. Kamash malan ima lo minshia bara. A mother never forgets about her child. Doesn't matter what your background is. Doesn't matter who you are. There's a bond, and a mother never forgets her child. And therefore, it must be the case that if we say that you're able to make a chazaka la'altar, it must mean that he purchased that eved and that it's not actually a din of a classical chazaka. Hanhu Ize, 3/4 of the way down, 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Make that 8 lines. There were some goats. Achlu chushla b'Naharda. They were eating peeled barley in the city of Naharda. Asa mari chulsha. Tafsinu, the owner of the peeled barley, saw that these animals were grazing in his field of peeled barley. And he's like, yo, these are not my animals and they're eating my food. So the owner of the peeled barley, Tafsinu, he grabbed onto the animals that were inappropriately and incorrectly eating from his field. And he wanted to make a big claim and say they ate a lot of barley. So Amar Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Yachal liton ad kedei dmehen. It's unbelievable. The person who owned the chushla, the peeled barley, is able to make a claim that the amount of peeled barley that was eaten was up to the cost of the total cost of the animals, not the normal feed of the animals, not how much is typically eaten, not what we project in an aggressive market of what he would have eaten, nothing like that. Because in theory, he could have said, the owner could have said, Omar, if the owner of the chushla, of the peeled barley, would have said, I own these animals, what would have happened? Okay, he would have become the owner. So therefore, he can charge for the peeled barley up to that amount. How can you say that that this din applies, that I'm allowed, if I'm the owner of the chushla, I can take your animals? After all, they're animals that walk around. Says the Gemara, shiny easy. The goats are different. They're a different profile of animal. Why? The mesira leroa, because they're typically watched over very carefully. They're supervised by a shepherd. In the mornings and in the evenings, the animals do walk around on their own. This guy, the shepherd's not outside all day. There are times of the day where the animal's walking around freely. Says the Gemara, that when we are talking about in Naharda, these animals taka are never alone. During the day, the regular shepherds, and at night they have a taya, which is typically referred to as an Arab of some kind, typically how it's defined. And therefore they're never unsupervised. In our Mishnah at the open of the parak on Daf Ches, we saw machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, and the machlokas was in a case of
Rashi for 1 feet of bottom.
no. We have enough politics in the news right now. I know. So the Gemara says, yes, everybody enjoyed it. Everybody enjoyed it. Hamevin Yavin. So our Mishnah on Daf Ches quoted a machlokas that when we're talking about what's referred to as stay habal, a field that is that only grows with rainwater, so you can't increase the pace of growth more than whatever the rain drops. There we had a machlokas, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, how we define a 3-year chazaka. According to Rabbi Shmuel, he held that it was really just 18 months. It was the last 3 months of year 1, the full 12 months of year 2, and the first 3 months of year 3. 3 plus 12 plus 3 is 18. Rabbi Akiva had the same model, but instead of it being 3 and 3 on the bookends, it was 1 and 1. 1 month on the last month of the year of year 1, all 12 months of year 2. Tishrei, the first month of that year, which totals 14 months. So we saw that machlokas. Let's analyze that machlokas and try and understand it. Rabbi Shmuel Amar Shlosha Chadashim v'chulei, he said 3 months and 3 months plus 12 months plus 3. Rabbi Kiva said 1 plus 12 plus 1. Lema near Ika Beinahu. Maybe the machlokas between them recommends the Gemara. Maybe they're arguing about whether or not plowing a field is considered a kinyan in a field. I could understand harvesting a field. That makes sense. But what if I try and be a squatter on a field and I plow the field? It's not harvesting. It's not the same thing. It's like if I go into someone's yard and I mow their lawn for them, that's not a sign of ownership necessarily. So perhaps this is the machlokas between them. To Rabbi Shmuel Savar, near lo have chazaka. Rabbi Shmuel says just plowing the land is not enough to make a chazaka. You have to harvest a crop. That takes 3 months. Therefore, 3 plus 12 plus 3. Masha ein kain Rabbi Akiva Savar near have chazaka, in which case we don't need 3 months. We only need 1 month. Says the Gemara, what do you need 1 month to plow the field for? Take the plow, go up and down the field. You'll be done in a day or two. What's with the whole month that Rabbi Akiva allocated? If what we're saying is that plowing is considered to be an act of kinyan, an act of a sign of ownership to make a chazaka, Rabbi Akiva doesn't need a month. The Tizbra, is it logical to say that this is true of Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva, my area chodesh. Why would Rabbi Akiva need a month? Turning to the top of Lamed Vav Amud Beis, Yom Echad Nami, even if it had only been one day. The Rashbam says, Yachol Lasos Bonir. It's one day. It's one day. Nowadays, with the machines, you don't even have to get up. The whole thing is so easy. But certainly back in the day, you go take your 4-animal plow, you pull. Shalom al Yisrael. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. That's not the machlokas Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah from the open of this parak on Kaf Ches. The Gemara says, everyone agrees that if you're trying to be a squatter and you go into the field and you mow someone's lawn and you're just trimming the bushes, that's not chazaka work. That doesn't count for chazaka work, according to both Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. So what then is the machlokas? According to Rabbi Shmuel, he holds that we need to wait for Pira Rabbah. In order for my squatter efforts to be real, I have to be there for a patient amount of time to grow a full crop. That takes 3 months. Therefore, Rabbi Shmuel held 3 plus 12 plus 3. Masha Ein Kain. Rabbi Akiva said Pira Zuta. As long as there's just a small amount of fruits, and that typically takes a month. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva, L'shitaso held 1 plus 12 plus 1. Tanu Rabbanon. It's not so pashut that we really hold, says the Gemara, that near lo have chazaka, because we have a brisa. And Lamed Bava Amud Beis on the 3rd line. We'll be going down until the 2 dots where you see the parentheses. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbana near eno chazaka. According to the Tanakama of the brisa, plowing is not a way to make a chazaka. V'yesh omrim hareze chazaka, against our Gemara. According to some, it seems that that plowing is a form of chazaka. Man yesh omrim. Who is the author of the dissenting opinion in the Mishnah, in the Brisa? Amar Rav Chizda, Rav Achahi. This is the sheet of Rav Acha. How can we create a connection between this Brisa and Rav Acha? Because the Tanya, 5 lines down. Nara Shana Vizara Beis, if you plowed 1 of the 3 years and you planted for 2 of the 3 years, or Nara Beis Vizara Shana, or you plowed for 2 of the years and planted only 1, Eina Chazaka. Rav Acha Amar Harezu Chazaka. What do we see from Rav Acha? That even though some of your 3 years was just plowing, you own the property. Which shows us that Rav Acha is of the opinion that plowing is an activity that qualifies for your 3-year Chazaka. However, the Tanakam of that brisa did not hold that way. Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, Shal is kol gedolei hador. I asked this question to everyone. The Amruli, and they said to me, Nir Harei Zeh Chazaka. They held like Rav Acha, against our Gemara's explanation of the Machlokas Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. They held that plowing is an activity that qualifies for making a Chazaka. Amar le Rabbi le Rav Nachman. My taima demand da Amar Nir Have Chazaka. Rabbi wants to know, and he asks Rav Nachman, why is it that there is such a shita that near have chazaka that plowing counts? Because lo avid inish to krivu leila are b'shasik. If I walked outside and you were mowing my lawn, I would question, what are you doing in my yard? So therefore, it must be that plowing is an activity that brings me out of my house and I'm going to make a mecha. Therefore, it's considered a chazaka. What about the other shita? Umay taima, 1/3 of the way down. Umay taima demandam are near lo have chazaka. According to the shita that plowing doesn't qualify as an activity to create a chazaka. Why not? It says the Gemara, Meimar Omar, if I see someone mowing my lawn, maybe I'll just sit back and relax. Kol sheyavo v'sheyavo dekarbo la'ayel. Oh, you want to come in there and trim the hedges? No problem. Sei gesund. That's okay. Don't send me a bill afterwards. You can do this on your own, but I didn't ask you to come here. You know, like the guys, like you're at certain corners and they like wash your windows for, I didn't ask you to wash my windows. Thank you very much. You feel so compelled, you give them $1. But you want to come. So that's why the Shita says that it's not really considered a chazaka, because I may well sit there with my feet up on the ottoman and let you cut my lawn. I don't care. The Gemara continues, Shalchule b'nei Pumnara, the people who lived in Pumnara, the open of the river, which means it's based on the locale. And they said, the Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda, Yilamdenu Rabbeinu, please, Rebbe, paskin us a shaila. Nira habe chazaka or lo habe chazaka. How do we paskin? Do we say that plowing is an activity that generates a chazaka? Or is plowing not an activity that generates a chazaka? Amar lu Rav Acha. He said to him, Rav Acha holds v'chol gdolei hador. Amre, they all say, Nir harei ze chazaka. So it seems from the Gemara that Rav Nachman Bar Chizda says that is definitely a chazaka. Rav Nachman, it's like Rabusa lemechshav gavre. You have to quote all the big guys, all the Gedolei Hador. After all, it's not so pashut that that's true. It's nice that you quoted the Gedolei Hador, but there are other Gedolei Hador who don't agree with you. And we're halfway down on Lamed Vav and Beis. The Gemara says, Harav v'Shmuel beBavel, Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbi Akiva be'Eretz Yisrael Amri Nir Lo Have Chazaka. You're sitting there saying all the poskim say, no, not all the poskim say. Rav and Shmuel Amoraim don't agree with you. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Var Mishnah, they also don't agree with that. That was the conclusion of our Gemara at the top of the page. We said Nir Lo Have Chazaka. That's the top line of the page says Elo Dekule Alma Nir Lo Have Chazaka, according to Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Mas Nisan He, and that's really what we just learned at the top of this page. What about Rav? Rav Maihi. How do we know that Rav holds that it's Eina Chazaka? It says the Gemara, Da'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Zu Divrei Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbi Akiva. Abal Chacham Morim Cheskasa Gimel Shanam Yom Liyom. Miyom Liyom leMeute Mai. What did the Gemara mean? The Chachamim mean when it said Miyom Liyom? What did it come to exclude? Lav leMeute Nir Delo. So Rav says it must be that Yom Liyom comes to teach us that a Nir, that plowing, does not qualify as an activity for chazaka. So now we see that Rav is in the same camp as Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, that a nir, an activity of plowing, does not generate a chazaka. Shmuel Maihi, what's the source for Shmuel that he is of the opinion that a nir, that plowing, is not considered a chazaka? Rabbi Yehuda Mar Shmuel, Zu Divrei Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbi Akiva, Aval Chachamim Romer Mad Sheyigdor Shalosh Gederos, V'yivtzor Gimel Betzeros, V'yimtzor Gimel Mesikos. Look what we see over here in the name of the Chachamim. What do they see? What do they say? They don't say plowing. You got to do 3 things for the grapes. You got to do 3 things for the olives. You got to work. You got to work hard. Why does if plowing, was a good enough activity to create a kinyan, it would have been listed here and it wasn't. Says the Gemara, "My Beinahu." What's the difference between Shitas Rav and Shitas Shmuel? They both have slightly different versions of the Chachamim. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye Dekel Na'ara Ika Beinahu. There's a difference between Shmuel and Rav in regards to a small dekel. According to Shmuel says the kinyan's only after 3 crops are generated. And according to Rav, it's only after 3 years worth of crops are generated. And we're going to skip the parentheses and stop at the 2 dots. Yemir Hashem, tomorrow night, we'll learn Daf Lamed Zayin and Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. On Shabbos, let's take a look at what we have. We have Lamed Ches Amud Beis and Lamed Tes. Will be more than fine. I will not be here on Monday night or Tuesday night, but I will, in Yirtzeh Hashem, be posting those blot provided that they're reasonably sized, and it looks like they are. All right, we'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.